September 28th, 2023. This is the S&P 500 E-Futures Mini on the 2000 tick chart on the NinjaTrader 8 platform. This is how I saw the charts today. Go down to the descriptions below. You can see timestamp where I thought I saw setups as well as where I took my trades. There's only one piece of economic data, the final GDP and unemployment claims, that came out around 5:30 Pacific Standard, which is about right here. And you can see it kind of maybe created a sell-off. Overall prices kind of stayed within two ranges. One was kind of in the pre-market that formed and into the open. Then it rallied, and then it kind of traded in this larger secondary range. So it almost looked like a stair step. I only took one trade today, and it was a losing one. And I'm going to go through all the setups and all the trades that I saw today. So pre-market, initially, right when you see this, you think it's going to be in a trading range. So this is actually the pre-market high up here, but I thought there might have been actually, well, I actually had this blue line a little lower. I actually had it down here, thinking there was a possible range maybe in play between this blue line and the bottom of the pre-market. And of course, I just kept in mind where the actual highs of the pre-market was. So there were kind of some setups in here, but I don't trade the pre-market, so I'm just going to go ahead and skip those. So on the open, it looked like trading or price action was falling within this smaller, tighter range, which I actually had down here at one time. And so prices were moving. Had a new low, first entry short, second entry short. There's not a good signal bar though, and it's a little early, so I just wanted to wait and see. I did see this as a potential fail breakout because at this point, I kind of drew it up to here. And I thought, okay, because when this formed, I go, okay, this could be the top of the range. I saw this as a visual second entry short because technically you have a new low here, first entry short, second entry short, and you would have a third entry short. But I also saw it as one push up, pull back, and a second push up. So I saw it as a visual second entry short and a potential fail breakout of this range with enough room to the EMA. But I wasn't sure of this actually being the range, so I actually skipped it. Turns out it would have worked out pretty nicely. I also see a new high here. It's a first entry long. This is creating a second entry long, but this is what I would call an almost good signal, almost good setup, because this is a pretty bad signal bar. So when you see this, even though you're hitting the bottom of the range, it would not, at least for me, did not make me prepare a trade because this just doesn't look very clean. And then, of course, when it confirms a second entry long, this just kind of like flashed up, and it's too late, in my opinion, to try to get in on this trade because this trigger bar is like pretty strong. To take your entry way up here, the trade's already pretty much been made. What you needed was this signal bar to actually close higher right here. But unfortunately that didn't happen, so you just had to kind of let it go. Chops down, chops through, kind of bounces off this pre-market low. Kind of bounces around. I don't see any good setups. You have a new low, you only have a first entry short. You technically have a second entry short here, but it's already moved too far. You almost have one clean leg, pull back a second clean leg. Then it falls into this green channel. I see a second entry long here because I see a first entry long, double top, and then it creates a second entry long. Now, this is what I also consider well, an almost good setup again, because I needed these signal bars to actually close a little bit more bullish, because this is potentially a signal bar. And you see this double top, but it actually went a little bit lower. So here, it just makes me wary because it wasn't a strong enough signal bar. Plus, I'm already potentially going to hit the tops here. I did think it was going to come back and test the highs, but I just didn't think a trade was worthwhile setting up right here. Here, you would have gotten filled, and it looks like it would have worked. But again, in real time, I just wasn't sure. I didn't think I had enough room to scalp out. Prices then continue chopping, and it continues. It falls into what I thought was a kind of another range here. Actually had this a little bit higher, about right there. Kind of double confirmation. And this is actually where I took my one and only trade. I saw a new low. I saw first entry short, second entry short. And here, the second entry short's confirming. Well, confirmed right here. It's bouncing up, and I'm thinking this is probably a failed second entry short because my reasoning was it made one big push up. It pulls back. It probably wants to come back to the other side of this pre-market high. So I actually entered prematurely. While this was forming and it double topped, I dropped in my order slightly behind to get enough room for an easy scalp. thinking there was enough momentum to move up to just get one quick point out. But as you can see here, this setup never really confirmed. So this technically hasn't failed the second entry short yet. So it's first entry short, second entry short. This technically hasn't failed yet. And then it creates an inside bar here. It moves up and then it flashes down. So this was a premature trade that I should not have taken. It's also near the top of this possible larger range where it's formed by this blue line in this bottom. It's already near the top, and I really should have just kind of stepped back and waited because I played with another possible top of the range right around here when I kind of made one touch. And so here it's kind of a little bit risky. And I know in the past, because I've done it and you can see in my previous videos, I have a bad habit that I've fallen into where I jump in on a trade before the setup has been confirmed. And on top of that, the area is a little congested because this range is pretty tight. So this is something I have to hammer out to make sure I'm just more patient and be more willing to just let a trade go, especially if it turns out being what I thought it was, and I just happen not to be on it. I have to be okay. I have to be okay with that. And then prices continue, falls out, chops around, bumps up, and I saw this second entry short here. It's a new low. It's a first entry short, pulls back, actually ticks one tick above here, and then double bottom, and then actually forms the second entry short here. The signal bar it's okay. It's doji, but the subsequent trigger bar is looking pretty good and is strong, and the EMA seems to be holding. So there might, I think there was kind of like a trap here where it went one push up, pull back, and then it ticked one tick higher, making you think it's about to, come up and test this high. And this second one, when it double topped, I can see it might be trapping some people because these two are the same size candle. And then it eventually kind of flashed down, so confirmed the second entry short. And then prices continue moving. I saw this setup coming up. It's a new high. It's a first entry long, second entry long. But I also saw this as a new low here, first entry short. Here you have a second entry short. On the same candle, you have confirmed first entry long, second entry long, failure. So I thought this is actually a possible trade because it also depends. I thought this was a possible trade. It's a good signal bar. The subsequent trigger bar, but the second entry short, the trigger bar isn't very good because this is very, very bullish. And then, excuse me, let me take that back. The signal bar on the second entry short is this green one here. And it's actually a very bad signal bar to think to go short. But then you have this other setup coming up. It's a first entry long, second entry long, and it fails. It engulfs pretty much this entire candle, closes below the EMA. So I thought potentially this might have been a trade. It's a strong break through the EMA, but I was a little weary. Looks like it would have worked because there's just enough momentum to carry this through. And there was just enough, just enough room to get a quick scalp out. And then prices continue going down. Kind of moves up. Here, I thought this was actually a trade here because there's a new low. It's a first entry short. It's hard to see, but you have a very subtle one move up. Here, you actually have your first entry short. It also breaks out of this channel. It pulls up, tries to test the high, and then it makes a second entry short here. So it's actually hard to see, but it's right there. It's one tick below, first entry short, pulls up. One tick below here, second entry short. But it hadn't break through the EMA. It's holding support. It wants to come up and test this high, and it never really did. It just almost matched it. So when it formed this candle, I thought this is actually probably a really decent trade. And also, depending on how you did the count, you could have said this is a double top. You could have said this is a first entry long, setting up for second entry long. I don't like to do that. I just kind of reset the count. So I just saw this as a new high. So then if you did that count, you'd have a second entry long confirm. And then it also bounced off the EMA, and this trade looks like it would have worked out pretty well. I also saw one leg up, pull back, and it's creating another measured move, which coincidentally was going to end where I thought this possible range was. Not the pre-market, but this consolidation area, this resistance area, which has been tested at least twice. You could argue for a third time if depending on how you drew the resistance. Prices then continue moving up. It kind of falls into this range and it just gets very congested, very choppy. I just don't see any good opportunities or any safe opportunities. And it finally breaks out. I don't have this red channel drawn just yet. You have a failed breakout here, but you didn't really have anything else going for it for a clean setup. Continues chopping, so you had to just sit through this patiently. And it finally breaks out and starts moving up. Technically, you have a new low here, first entry short, second entry short right here, and a failure, but it's far from the EMA. There's no real clean setup. Prices then continue moving up, falls into this other consolidation range, and this just doesn't look very inviting to try to take a trade. Here I did draw finally the trend line support, and I put the resistance up here, but it really only confirmed once. However, since we're in a bullish uptrend, bullish move up, I was going to use this line down here, the support, more as a extra piece of indication or another key entry point if I was looking for a setup, and this one would just add a little bit more reinforcement to if I was deciding to go long. But then up here, since this top trend line of this channel isn't really confirmed, I'd be a little bit more weary when prices came up to here. I'd be wary of whether a bounce was really going to have a rejection and push prices back down. Prices continue moving up. I don't see any clean setup. Another little consolidation area. It's pretty congested. I saw a measured move was completed. So it's from here, pulls up, kind of made one leg up here, pulls back, and then here it confirmed the measure move now. So I'm thinking there might be potential correction. However, I also know that this has been a really strong push up. Nothing says it couldn't keep going. Then prices pull back, goes to the EMA. It's supported by the EMA, bounces around, finally breaks through the EMA and comes back up a little bit. And I think there's a channel here. There's no clean second entries that I can find that I feel were safe. Bounces, and here it confirms this red support trend line again, so I'm liking this even more now. There's no clean second entries that I could find. Prices continue moving. Technically, you do have a one break below here, and you could say this is a new low. It's a first entry short, comes all the way up, breaks out of this green channel. Technically, you have a second entry short here. It's very hard to see, but then you'd have a third entry short. So you could actually say it's a first entry short, pulls up, second entry short in the visual. I saw that, but I couldn't quite tell. I wasn't really sure, so I had to leave it alone. And prices finally break through the red channel, starts moving back down, and I'm just kind of waiting and watching. Falls into this green channel, kind of not very clean. It's kind of an ugly channel, but it is kind of there. I saw a new low, first entry short, second entry short, but I also saw this as a visual, one push up, pull back, a second push up. So I actually saw one leg, pull back, second leg, and there's a second pullback. And this is a pretty decent signal bar. The signal bar is like closed right at the bottom. It's rejected by the EMA, so it looks pretty nice. It's the first break of this green down channel, so it's already made one push down, pulls up. It could be trying to make the second push down to here. The EMA is helping to push it down. I didn't have this blue range drawn yet. It came later, so this was not a key entry point to consider. It was just one push, two push, and the EMA, and the fact that you want to come back and test the lows here. And it looked like it would have worked. Prices continue moving down and chops around, falls into this range. This is when I finally draw this blue box here, this range. Prices were just kind of staying within it. Then it finally breaks out, falls down. It falls, looks like, in another range. And this is actually where I start to think there might be this purple channel, but this purple channel is actually drawn at the end of the day when I was trying to decipher if there was kind of a larger range. So you actually have a new low. It's a first entry short, second entry short. It's a bad signal bar for second entry short. You technically have a lower high here, but this is no setup in my opinion. It's just too congested right now. It's just prices just moving up and down inside this range. It's very congested here for sure. Starts moving up, it breaks out, it falls into this range again, as you're going to see. I also saw a new high, first entry long, sets up, second entry long. This second entry long, this is a pretty good signal bar, but when I saw this, I was thinking there's not much room to get to the top. Plus, it already broke out of this up green channel. It already made the new high. It did it twice. So it broke out, made one high, pulled back, second high. So now this could be a lower high and it could be coming back down, except the EMA is coming into play. So I wasn't really sure. I did think there was a second entry long coming up, but I was reluctant to take this trade just because there just doesn't seem very much room. And I wasn't sure if this really was a range at this point because I could have argued that this is a failed breakout. But here you have a failed second entry long. So the second entry long created a failure here. So well, price action created a failure. So new high, first entry long, second entry long, failure. This failure, I wasn't ready to take a short yet because there's not enough room for a quick and easy scalp before you hit the EMA. So even though it broke out, it could be a failed breakout here and out to here. This could have been the range as well. Could have been down here. So I wasn't really sure. So I had to wait. Then this sets up and actually creates a lower high and flashes down. So you don't know you have a lower high yet till this candle closes. So when this candle closes, I thought there's probably, you know, excuse me, there's probably a trade here because you do have a lower high and it did push very strongly through the EMA. So it made one push up, it broke out, made one push up, and the visual pulls back, made a second push up, and now it's coming back down. So here, if I were to take a trade, I would want to have taken it one tick below this here. Hopefully the next candle here flashes up and collects me. Looks like I would have missed a trade, even if you try to put it any time anywhere in within this candle to try to get a little reduce your risk, you would not have gotten filled. And this just flashed down. Then prices continue moving. You have a first entry short, you have a second entry short, but it's bad signal bar. Prices continue chopping. I don't see anything too appealing. It kind of falls into this green channel going up. I wasn't sure. But here you only get a bunch of first entries. I mean, you could argue there's a new low, first entry short, second entry short, but you don't really have a setup, in my opinion, right now. Because here, you don't know it's going to fail because it could just continue going down. Then you do have a failure, but it already exceeded the recent highs. And the same thing here, you have first entry long, and that's all you get. So then prices keep going up. There's no clean setup. Ignore the purple line. I did see a new high. So first entry long pulls back, second entry long, and second entry long created looks like what's coming up to be a failure because it closed below the EMA. This was a pretty strong signal bar for a second entry long, but if you look at what happened is it broke out of this green channel, so it wants to push up and test this, right? It's a pretty good signal bar, but it also broke below the EMA. The second one looked like it trapped a bunch of people that went in early because they might have counted this as a new high, first entry long, second entry long, might have entered here, picks up two ticks, and then flashes down. So I thought this was a failed second entry long, closed below the EMA, trapped a bunch of shorts, and it looked like it was going to probably push back down, and it ended up pushing back down. And it kind of falls into this range, but this is getting pretty late in the day. I had a new low, first entry short, second entry short, but you can see it as visual first entry short, second entry short, but I just didn't like what I was looking at. There was no clean, safe entry in my opinion, at least for my skill level. I was just kind of watching, it kind of chops into this range, and I'm just pretty much not taking any more trades because this is the last 10 minutes of the day where it gets super duper choppy. And that's kind of how I saw the charts today. There was some opportunities that I unfortunately didn't capitalize on. I only took one trade, and unfortunately, I was red on that trade, so red for the day. So hopefully that was helpful.